In the evolution of the trail, the students, as long ago as 40 years, used to take field trips over here with me, and they liked a lot of things they saw. And they said we ought to have market and have a trail. Well, the problem was they never got the thing finished. And about 10 years ago, the time they were building a new museum, I decided that that museum should have an outdoor part to it, and that would be the trail. And I would make that as a contribution to the new museum, which many of you have been there and you see what it is. And as department head and head of the museum at that time in geology, I started a program of encouraging the K-12 teachers to bring students here to our museum, which was at Berthoud Hall, and also to make a short walk over to look at some of the geology. And that inspired the dean of the faculty to give us a budget, hire a curator, and it's continued to grow. I was only there about 5 years in that job, and it continued to grow with the museum we have today, which has become kind of a center of activity for the campus, for visitors as well as social events. Well, the trail has been, I decided to do the work on it because it looked like all the reclamation was finished, and therefore they would not be changing things very much, because that's always a problem. You can do work and all of a sudden it disappears, but that's not what has happened here. At the present, it's pretty well secured. You still hear me okay? Well, a couple things have happened. One is the trail's been greatly improved by student work and by the buildings and grounds, and there are a lot of people that are stakeholders in it now. And the second thing was that this stop 2 that we're going to walk to is probably the favorite locality for most people to visit, because it has the dinosaur tracks and logs and fossils, and that was recognized by the National Park Service. And there's a sign over here that has now been dedicated to this site, fossil site, being a part of what's called the National Natural Landmark. And there are several hundred of these sites through the United States, but this one is one of the more recent ones. It extends to 4 fossil localities in the Laramie and Dakota Formation, from here to almost to Morrison, and a site up at North Golden here. And they dedicated this plaque that the Park Service sent us. The school's commitment is to make sure that this site is preserved. The Park Service doesn't have anything to say over the use of it or anything else, so it was an easy thing to do. And the site kind of sold itself. And of course, we wouldn't be where we are on all this without Steve and his interest, being on campus, being able to touch into people to help him in what's involved here, and also raising some money from 40 members of the Geology Department Advisory Advancement. Dean Moderman's a member of that group, the fellow with the hat on, the only person here with the hat on, besides me.
Well, they issued the hats as standard headwear back in the 50s.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
You had to buy the senior Stetson.
You had to be a senior, yeah.
Okay. Always good to see the old timers back on campus. Now, as we walk over past the monument, you might see that that's a piece of the Fountain Formation. That's the formation at Red Rocks, where many of you have been. And there's a great big hole drilled in it. And I didn't tell the Park Service that one of the reasons I selected that is because of the beautiful rock with green lichen, but also because man had something to do with that rock. There was experimental drilling down here in a lab, and that experimental drilling tells you what this school's all about. It's applied research in science and skills that relate to mineral resources. Steve, would I ever tell you that story?
I like it. You haven't. See, I come out on all these trips because I learn something new every time.
So any questions here before we move on?
Bob, did this outcrop extend across the field to 19th?
Yes. And in fact, along West Campus Drive, School of Mines bought this property in the mid-70s, or acquired it, traded for it. And they put 20 buildings along here, which was married student housing. And as a part of the reclamation of the old mines, they had thought they'd compacted the clay sufficiently that they would have no foundation problems. Well, in fact, they did have foundation problems, and after about 15 or 20 years, all those buildings were removed. And they went into a second phase reclamation, which is what you see here now with the playing fields. And there are some old photographs around that show you the difficulty of mine reclamation. And I'll say more about that as we go along, but it was not an easy task, and it was pretty costly to add this 17, 18 acres here on the west side of the campus. Okay? Any other questions?